I knew I didn't belong the moment I walked through the door. Christmas Day. Brooklyn Heights. My son Jordan's condo, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the East River, the kind of place you see in magazines where perfect families drink champagne and laugh about their Aspen ski trips. Except I wasn't part of that picture. Not anymore. Oh, you're here. Vanessa, my daughter-in-law, stood in the marble foyer wearing a cream cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her smile was the kind you give to someone who showed up uninvited, even though Jordan had texted me 3 times to make sure I was coming. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," I said, holding out a small gift bag. Inside was a hand-knitted scarf I'd made for her. Took me 2 weeks, blue and silver, her favorite colors. She glanced at it like I'd handed her a used tissue. How thoughtful. She didn't take it. "We're doing gifts later. You can just put it somewhere." I set it on the console table, next to a massive floral arrangement that looked like it cost what I make in a week cleaning office buildings in Midtown. The dining room was something out of a movie. White roses, gold-rimmed china, candles everywhere. Vanessa's family filled the space like they owned it, her mother Elise, in head-to-toe Chanel, her 2 cousins laughing over glasses of wine that I knew for a fact was $200 a bottle because I'd seen Jordan's credit card statement once when I helped him organize his files. And then there was my seat, at the very end of the table. A folding chair. The kind you pull out for kids at Thanksgiving when you run out of real chairs. Everyone else sat in plush velvet dining chairs with brass legs. Even Vanessa's 7-year-old nephew had a better seat than me. I lowered myself onto that folding chair and felt something crack inside my chest. Not my heart, something deeper. My dignity, maybe. Jordan caught my eye from across the table. For a second, I thought he'd say something. Stand up for me. Offer me his chair like the boy I raised would have done. But he looked away. My hands started to shake, so I folded them in my lap. My dress a simple black shift from TJ Maxx that I'd bought 3 years ago felt suddenly too cheap, too old, too visible next to all this wealth. I could feel Elise's eyes on me, that subtle once-over that rich women do when they're cataloging everything wrong with you. Dinner started. Roasted duck, truffle potatoes, some kind of salad with edible flowers. I nibbled at my food, trying to be invisible. Then Vanessa stood up. She tapped her crystal wine glass with a silver fork, and the sound cut through the laughter like a knife. "Everyone, I want to make a toast." The table went quiet, all eyes on her. She was glowing, radiant, every inch the successful Manhattan lawyer who'd married my son and elevated him into a world I could never touch. "To family," she said, raising her glass. "To this beautiful home Jordan and I have built together. To prosperity, success, and—" her eyes slid to me. My stomach dropped. "And Mom, Milani," she smiled, but it was all teeth, no warmth. "I just want to say, you should be grateful we even included you this year. We could have used that seat for someone younger, someone more, relevant." The room went silent for exactly 2 seconds. Then, Vanessa's cousin started laughing. Quiet at first, then louder. My face burned. I stared at the white tablecloth, at the gold-rimmed plate in front of me, at the folding chair cutting into the backs of my thighs. My cracked iPhone screen reflected the candlelight. My thrift store dress suddenly felt like a costume, like I was playing dress-up in a world that had never wanted me. Jordan said nothing. My son, the boy I raised alone after his father died, the boy I worked 3 jobs to put through college, the boy whose law school loans I co-signed, even though I was terrified of the debt, sat there staring at his duck like it was the most fascinating thing in the world. I forced my mouth into a smile. "The kind you wear when you're drowning but don't want anyone to call for help. Thank you for having me," I whispered. Vanessa sat down, triumphant. The conversation moved on. Someone mentioned their ski trip to Vail. Elise started talking about her new beach house in the Hamptons. I reached for my water glass, and my hand was shaking so badly I almost knocked it over. Then my phone buzzed. Under the table, hidden in my lap, the screen lit up. 3 p.m. Final confirmation. Foreclosure clause active. Proceed. Y. N. I glanced at the corner of my phone. 2:55 p.m. My thumb hovered over the screen. The thing is, What Vanessa didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this condo, this beautiful Brooklyn Heights palace, with its river views and its marble foyer and its $200 wine, I owned it. Not Jordan. Not Vanessa. Me. The building. The mortgage. Every single clause in the contract Jordan had signed 3 years ago, when I helped him secure financing through a holding company I'd quietly built after my husband died. And that foreclosure clause? The one I'd buried deep in the paperwork, the one that activated if certain conditions were met? It was designed for exactly this moment. I looked up at Vanessa, still glowing at the head of my table, in my condo, surrounded by her people who thought I was nothing. I looked at Jordan, who still wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at Elise, who was whispering something to her daughter and smirking. Then I pressed Y. Confirmed. Foreclosure proceedings begin 12/26 at 9 a.m. I set my phone down and picked up my fork. "This duck is delicious," I said quietly. No one heard me. But tomorrow morning, they would. On Christmas Day, my DIL mocked, "Be grateful we're including you." Then she begged for my mercy. Narrated by Milani. I knew I didn't belong the moment I walked through the door. Christmas Day. Brooklyn Heights. My son Jordan's condo, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the East River, the kind of place you see in magazines where perfect families drink champagne and laugh about their Aspen ski trips. Except I wasn't part of that picture. Not anymore. "Oh, you're here!" Vanessa, my daughter-in-law, stood in the marble foyer wearing a cream cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her smile was the kind you give to someone who showed up uninvited, even though Jordan had texted me 3 times to make sure I was coming. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," I said, holding out a small gift bag. Inside was a hand-knitted scarf I'd made for her. Took me 2 weeks, blue and silver, her favorite colors. She glanced at it like I'd handed her a used tissue. How thoughtful. She didn't take it. "We're doing gifts later. You can just put it somewhere." I set it on the console table, next to a massive floral arrangement that looked like it cost what I make in a week cleaning office buildings in Midtown. The dining room was something out of a movie. White roses, gold-rimmed china, candles everywhere. Vanessa's family filled the space like they owned it, her mother Elise in head-to-toe Chanel. Her 2 cousins laughing over glasses of wine that I knew for a fact was $200 a bottle because I'd seen Jordan's credit card statement once when I helped him organize his files. And then there was my seat. At the very end of the table. A folding chair. The kind you pull out for kids at Thanksgiving when you run out of real chairs. Everyone else sat in plush velvet dining chairs with brass legs. Even Vanessa's 7-year-old nephew had a better seat than me. I lowered myself onto that folding chair and felt something crack inside my chest. Not my heart, something deeper. My dignity, maybe. Jordan caught my eye from across the table. For a second, I thought he'd say something. Stand up for me. Offer me his chair like the boy I raised would have done. But he looked away. My hands started to shake, so I folded them in my lap. My dress a simple black shift from TJ Maxx that I'd bought 3 years ago felt suddenly too cheap, too old, too visible, next to all this wealth. I could feel Elise's eyes on me, that subtle once-over that rich women do when they're cataloging everything wrong with you. Dinner started. Roasted duck. Truffle potatoes. Some kind of salad with edible flowers. I nibbled at my food, trying to be invisible. Then Vanessa stood up. She tapped her crystal wine glass with a silver fork, and the sound cut through the laughter like a knife. "Everyone, I want to make a toast." The table went quiet, all eyes on her. She was glowing, radiant, every inch the successful Manhattan lawyer who'd married my son and elevated him into a world I could never touch. "To family," she said, raising her glass. "To this beautiful home Jordan and I have built together. To prosperity, success, and," her eyes slid to me, "to gratitude." My stomach dropped. "And Mom, I mean, Milani," she smiled, but it was all teeth, no warmth. "I just want to say, you should be grateful we even included you this year. We could have used that seat for someone younger. Someone more, relevant." The room went silent for exactly 2 seconds. Then Vanessa's cousins started laughing. Quiet at first, then louder. Elise covered her mouth with her hand, but her shoulders were shaking. My face burned. I stared at the white tablecloth, at the gold-rimmed plate in front of me, at the folding chair cutting into the backs of my thighs. My cracked iPhone screen reflected the candlelight. My thrift store dress suddenly felt like a costume, like I was playing dress-up in a world that had never wanted me. Jordan said nothing. My son, the boy I raised alone after his father died, the boy I worked 3 jobs to put through college, the boy whose law school loans I co-signed even though I was terrified of the debt, sat there staring at his duck like it was the most fascinating thing in the world. I forced my mouth into a smile. The kind you wear when you're drowning but don't want anyone to call for help. "Thank you for having me," I whispered. Vanessa sat down, triumphant. The conversation moved on. Someone mentioned their ski trip to Vail. Elise started talking about her new beach house in the Hamptons. I reached for my water glass, and my hand was shaking so badly I almost knocked it over. Then my phone buzzed. Under the table, hidden in my lap, the screen lit up. 3 p.m. Final confirmation. Foreclosure clause active. Proceed YN? I glanced at the corner of my phone. 2:55 p.m. My thumb hovered over the screen. The thing is, what Vanessa didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this condo, this beautiful Brooklyn Heights palace with its river views and its marble foyer and its $200 wine, I owned it. Not Jordan. Not Vanessa. Me. The building. The mortgage. Every single clause in the contract Jordan had signed 3 years ago when I helped him secure financing through a holding company I'd quietly built after my husband died. And that foreclosure clause? The one I'd buried deep in the paperwork, the one that activated if certain conditions were met, it was designed for exactly this moment. I looked up at Vanessa, still glowing at the head of my table, in my condo, surrounded by her people who thought I was nothing. I looked at Jordan, who still wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at Elise, who was whispering something to her daughter and smirking. Then I pressed Y, confirmed. Foreclosure proceedings begin 12/26 at 9 a.m. I set my phone down and picked up my fork. "This duck is delicious," I said quietly. No one heard me. But tomorrow morning, they would. I needed air. Or wine. Or maybe just 5 minutes where I didn't have to look at Vanessa's smug face across that table, at my son pretending I didn't exist, at Elise's pitying glances that said poor thing while meaning pathetic thing. "Excuse me," I murmured, pushing back from my folding chair. Nobody looked up. "I'll get more wine." In the kitchen, I gripped the edge of the marble counter, the one I'd helped pick out 3 years ago when they were renovating and tried to breathe. My reflection stared back at me from the stainless steel refrigerator. 62 years old. Gray hair, I couldn't afford to color anymore. Hands that had scrubbed floors and changed bedpans and signed mortgage papers with blind trust. "Grateful," she'd said. "I should be grateful." I pressed my palms against my eyes, willing myself not to cry. Not here, not where they could see. That's when I heard the voices. The kitchen opens onto a small hallway that leads to the living room. They must have thought I'd gone to the bathroom, must have thought the sound of Christmas jazz would cover their conversation. But I heard every word. "Honestly, she should be thanking us," Vanessa's voice, bright with wine and cruelty. "Most people her age are in assisted living, not eating prime rib in Brooklyn Heights." My breath stopped. "Has she signed the papers yet?" Elise. Sharp, businesslike. "The power of attorney packet? You said you'd get it done before New Year." Silence. Then Jordan's voice, lower, careful. "I'll trick her tonight. I put it in a Christmas card, told her it's just beneficiary updates for her hospital insurance. She'll sign anything if it sounds like it's for me." The floor tilted beneath my feet. Vanessa laughed. Actually laughed. "Good. Once we move her into that senior place in Queens, what's it called? Sunshine something? We can finally refinance without her drama. I am not raising my kids in a property we don't fully control. We need to cash out some equity." "The place on Woodside Avenue," Jordan said. "Studio apartments. She doesn't need much space at her age. And it's close to the subway," Vanessa added, like she was being generous. "So she can still visit. On holidays. If we're not busy." My hand found the doorframe. Gripped it so hard my knuckles went white. They were going to put me in a home. Take my name off the deed. Refinance the condo I owned, the one I'd signed for. The one I'd put my credit and Darius's life insurance and 23 years of night shifts into, and lock me in some Woodside studio where I could visit on holidays. If they weren't busy, I thought about the card Jordan had given me earlier. Red envelope. Glitter marker on the front. Merry Christmas, Mom, love, Jay. Inside, he'd tucked a small stack of papers. Just some boring beneficiary stuff, he'd said, kissing my cheek. Sign when you get a chance. Nothing urgent. I'd smiled. Tucked it into my purse. Planned to sign it later because my boy asked me to, and I'd never said no to him in his entire life. God, I'm such a fool. She's taking forever with that wine, Elise said. Should someone check on her? She's fine, Vanessa replied, probably crying in the bathroom. She does that. They knew. They knew what they were doing to me. And they didn't care. No worse than that, they found it funny. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. I pulled it out with shaking hands. Miriam. Attorney. Ready when you are. Once you say the word, we pull the trigger on the fraud clause. They won't know what hit them. Miriam Chen. The lawyer I'd hired 6 months ago when I started noticing things. Small things. Jordan asking me to sign documents real quick without explanation. Vanessa mentioning refinancing in conversations I wasn't supposed to overhear. A letter from the bank about ownership restructuring that nobody had discussed with me. I'd brought everything to Miriam, the original LLC paperwork, the mortgage docs, the co-signing agreements. She'd gone pale reading them. Milani, she'd said quietly, do you understand what you own here? I'm just the co-signer. No. You're the primary owner. The LLC is in your name. The mortgage is in your name. Jordan is listed as a resident with limited equity stake pending full transfer, which requires your signature. She'd looked at me over her glasses. If they're trying to refinance without your explicit written consent, that's fraud. And this clause here? She'd tapped a paragraph buried on page 17. This is a foreclosure trigger. If the secondary party attempts to transfer, sell, or leverage the property without primary owner approval, you have the right to immediate repossession. I'd stared at her. You mean I could kick them out tomorrow if you wanted? It's your building. I'd laughed. Actually laughed. Miriam, I'm not going to kick out my son. She'd closed the folder slowly. Then I hope he deserves your mercy. Now, standing in this kitchen, listening to my son plot to steal my home and lock me in a woodside studio, I pulled up Miriam's number. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. If you've ever trusted someone so deeply that their betrayal made you question your own worth, you're not alone. You're not crazy for believing in people. You're not weak for loving someone who didn't love you back the same way. Thank you to everyone who helps me tell these stories. Your support keeps this space alive for those who still believe that truth, somehow, will always find its way. Because the truth was finding its way right now. I typed 4 words. Pull the trigger. Do it. Miriam's response came in seconds. Done. Foreclosure notice will be hand-delivered tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Merry Christmas, Milani. You're getting your house back. I slipped my phone back into my apron, picked up the wine bottle with steady hands, walked back into the dining room where they were all laughing about something, probably me, probably my pathetic thrift store dress, or my cracked phone screen, or the way I'd flinched when Vanessa made her grateful toast. I set the wine on the table. Jordan looked up. Thanks, Mom. I met his eyes, Darius's eyes, the eyes I used to see in our son's face when he was 7 years old, unwrapping secondhand toys like they were treasures. You're welcome, sweetheart, I said softly. Tomorrow morning, he'd get a very different kind of gift, but tonight, I'd let him enjoy his prime rib. After all, it was the last meal he'd ever eat in my house. Part 4. Despair and Isolation, the loneliest seat at the table. I sat back down at that folding chair like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just heard my son plot to steal my home. Like my daughter-in-law hadn't just laughed about locking me in a woodside studio. Like the people at this table, my table, in my condo, hadn't just reduced my entire life to an inconvenience they needed to manage. Nobody noticed my red eyes. Nobody asked if I was okay. Jordan pushed the glittery envelope toward me. Red and gold. Merry Christmas, Mom, written in his careful handwriting, the kind he used when he wanted something. Sign here, Mom, he said, tapping the papers inside. His voice was gentle, practiced. It's just so if anything happens to you, I can handle stuff. Hospital forms, bank accounts, you know. In case. The table went quiet. All eyes on me. Vanessa's perfectly manicured nails tapped against her wine glass, impatient, annoyed. Elise sipped her champagne, watching me over the rim like I was a show she'd paid to see. The cousins exchanged glances. Even Vanessa's little nephew stopped playing with his phone. I looked at the envelope in Jordan's hand. Then I looked at my son. Really looked at him. This was the baby who used to fall asleep on my chest on the B train coming home from the hospital, his little fist wrapped around my scrub collar. The boy who cried when I had to work Christmas Eve and made me promise I'd be home before Santa came. The teenager who'd hugged me so tight after his high school graduation that I couldn't breathe, whispering "Thank you, Mom, thank you" into my hair. Where did that boy go? When did he learn to look at me like I was a problem to solve instead of a person to love? Mom? His voice had an edge now. It's just a signature. Takes 2 seconds. I pulled the envelope closer. Felt the weight of it. The papers inside that would sign away my rights, my home, my future disguised as love, as care, as just in case. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage so deep I didn't know where to put it. My hands are shaking, I said softly, and it wasn't a lie. Let me take this home. I'll read it when I'm calm. Vanessa's eye roll was so dramatic I could hear it. Here we go, she muttered. The drama. It's not drama, babe, Jordan said quickly, still looking at me. Mom just needs time. Right, Mom? You'll sign it tomorrow? I tucked the envelope into my purse. We'll see. The air at the table shifted. Vanessa's smile went cold. Elise set down her glass. Jordan's jaw tightened the way it used to when he was a teenager and didn't get his way. But nobody said anything. Because what could they say? That I had to sign? That it was required? That would give away the game. So they moved on. Started talking about their New Year's Eve plans, some party in Tribeca, bottle service, people I'd never meet. I sat there in my folding chair, invisible again. After a while, I stood up. I need some air. Nobody stopped me. The balcony was small, just enough room for 2 chairs and a view of the East River. The cold hit me immediately, but I didn't care. I needed to feel something other than the suffocating heat of that dining room. Snow was starting to fall. Tiny flurries drifting down from the gray sky, disappearing into the dark water below. Inside, I could hear the muffled sound of Christmas music, laughter, glasses clinking. They didn't miss me. They never had. I leaned against the railing and closed my eyes. All those years. All those sacrifices. The double shifts and the night jobs and the subway rides at midnight when I was so tired I couldn't see straight. The private school tuition. The college loans. The life insurance money I'd cashed out so Jordan could graduate debt-free. I'd worked my whole life so my child would never feel small. Somewhere along the way, I became the one they were ashamed of. The one who didn't fit. The one who wore thrift store dresses to fancy dinners. The one who embarrassed them just by existing. Be grateful we even included you. I pressed my palms against my eyes, but the tears came anyway. Silent. If you've ever sat in a room so quiet it started to echo your thoughts, you'll understand this silence. The kind that doesn't bring peace, just emptiness. The kind where you realize you've been fighting so hard to be loved that you forgot to ask if the love was even real. Thank you to those who help keep these stories alive. Your kindness helps give voice to people who've been forgotten, who sit alone in their pain, waiting to be seen again. I pulled out my phone. Opened my photos. Scrolled back years until I found it. Jordan at 7 years old. Christmas morning. Sitting in front of our plastic tree in that Queen's walk-up, grinning so wide his missing front tooth showed, holding up that second-hand Game Boy like it was made of gold. This is the best Christmas ever, Mom. I zoomed in on his face. On the pure, unfiltered joy. The love. When did it stop being enough? When did I stop being enough? Darius, I whispered to the night, to the snow, to whatever part of my husband's spirit might still be out there listening. I'm so tired of begging to be loved. The balcony door slid open behind me. Jordan stepped out, hands in his pockets. Mom, you okay? You've been out here a while. I wiped my face quickly. Didn't turn around. I'm fine. You don't look fine. Well, I am. Silence. The kind we'd never had when he was young. Back then, he told me everything, every fear, every dream, every secret. Now we were strangers, who shared blood and nothing else. About the papers, he started. I know it seems like a lot, but it's really just, stop. My voice came out harder than I meant it to. Just stop. He stopped. I turned to face him. My baby. My betrayer. I gave you everything, I said quietly. Everything I had. Everything I was. And you know what's funny? He didn't answer. I'd do it again. Even knowing how this ends. Even knowing you'd stand by while your wife mocks me. Even knowing you'd try to trick me into signing away my home. I smiled, and it hurt. Because that's what mothers do. We love you even when you don't deserve it. Mom, I'm going home. I walked past him. Back into the warm apartment that smelled like expensive food, and expensive wine, and expensive people who thought I was worthless. I grabbed my coat from the closet. My purse with the unsigned papers still inside. Vanessa appeared in the hallway. Leaving already? We haven't even done dessert. I'm tired, I said. Well, don't forget to sign those papers. Jordan really needs them by tomorrow. I looked at her. This woman, who'd called me a pig, who'd laughed about putting me in a home, who was raising children in a condo I'd sacrificed everything to give my son. Merry Christmas, Vanessa, I said, and I left. The subway ride back to Astoria was empty. Just me and a few other lonely souls traveling through the city on Christmas night. I sat by the window and watched the tunnel lights blur past. Tomorrow, Miriam's foreclosure notice would arrive at 9 a.m. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, I was just a tired woman on the N train, going home to an empty apartment, wondering when the people you love most become the ones who hurt you worst. Outside my window, the city rushed by in darkness, and I'd never felt more alone. 1 week before Christmas, my phone rang at 7:43 inches the morning. I was making coffee in my tiny Astoria kitchen, the one bedroom I'd moved to after Jordan got the condo. The place with radiators that clanked, and a refrigerator that hummed too loud, and neighbors whose arguments bled through the walls at 2 a.m. But it was mine. Paid for. Quiet. Mrs. Milani Thomas? The voice was professional. Clipped. The kind that doesn't call with good news. Speaking. This is First Midtown Bank, Collections Department. We're calling about your past due home equity line on the Brooklyn Heights property at 447 Furman Street. My coffee cup stopped halfway to my mouth. I'm sorry, what? Your home equity line of credit. You're currently 60 days past due. The outstanding balance is $140,000, and if we don't receive payment within 10 business days, we'll be forced to initiate foreclosure proceedings. The room tilted. I don't have a home equity line. Silence on the other end. Papers shuffling. Ma'am, according to our records, you co-signed on a HELOC in March of this year. The funds were dispersed directly to the primary account holder. More shuffling. Jordan Thomas. Are you saying you didn't authorize this loan? My hands started shaking so badly I had to set down the coffee. No. I didn't. I see. Ma'am. I'm going to transfer you to our fraud department. 2 days later, I sat across from a loan officer at the Midtown branch, a kid who looked barely old enough to shave, wearing a cheap suit and an expression that said he'd seen this story 100 times before. He slid a manila folder across the desk. Mrs. Thomas, these are the loan documents we have on file. I opened it with hands that wouldn't stay steady. Inside, application forms, tax returns, bank statements, proof of assets, all with my name, my social security number, my signature, except it wasn't my signature. My doesn't curl like that, I whispered, tracing the forged letter with my finger. And I cross my ain'ts. Higher. This isn't my handwriting. The loan officer nodded slowly. I believe you, ma'am. But legally, this puts you in a difficult position. The loan is in default. And your name is on the contract. So what do I do? He hesitated. You might want to talk to a lawyer. Miriam Chen's office was in a walk-up in Park Slope 3rd floor, no elevator, a waiting room with mismatched chairs and a fake plant that had seen better days. But when she looked at my documents, her eyes went sharp as glass. They didn't just use your name, she said, spreading the papers across her desk. They committed fraud, identity theft, forgery, and they were sloppy about it. She pointed to a line buried in the fine print. But here's the part they don't understand, Milani. She pulled out another folder, the original mortgage documents from 8 years ago. This condo? On paper, it's yours. The LLC is registered under your name, M.T. Thomas Holdings. Sole member, you. Jordan is listed as a resident with conditional equity transfer pending your approval. I stared at the documents. What does that mean? It means they've been living in your house. And now they've taken out a fraudulent loan against your property. She leaned back, studying me. If you wanted to, you could call their loan. Trigger the fraud clause in the original mortgage. Force a foreclosure. My breath caught. I could. Kick them out? You could do it on Christmas, if you like poetic timing. I sat there in that cluttered office, listening to sirens wail past on 7th Avenue, and felt something shift inside my chest. Not anger, not yet. Clarity. Cold, sharp, unforgiving clarity. How long would it take? I asked. Miriam smiled. I can have the paperwork ready by tomorrow. That night, I sat alone in my apartment with the foreclosure documents spread across my kitchen table. Outside, the city hummed its endless song. Inside, the radiator clanked and hissed. I thought about Jordan as a baby, as a boy, as a teenager who'd hugged me after graduation and whispered thank you. I thought about Darius, who'd worked himself into an early grave so our son could have a better life. I thought about every double shift, every skipped meal, every subway ride home at midnight when I was so tired I couldn't see straight. And I thought about Vanessa's voice. Be grateful we even included you. My phone buzzed. Miriam, attorney, ready when you are. Once you say the word, we pull the trigger. They won't know what hit them. I looked at Darius's photo on the shelf. 20 years gone, but his eyes still watched me from that frame. What would you do? I whispered. But I already knew. Darius had always been too forgiving, too soft. He would have found excuses. He would have said Jordan made a mistake, that family forgives, that we don't give up on our children. But Darius never had to watch his son forge his name on fraudulent documents. Never had to sit on a folding chair while strangers laughed at him. Never had to hear the word grateful used like a weapon. If you've ever found truth in the quiet moments after pain, you know what this part feels like. The moment when you stop asking why me and start asking what now? Thank you to everyone who supports these stories. Your kindness keeps hope alive for people still finding their voice after betrayal. I picked up my phone and typed, "Do it. Send the foreclosure notice Christmas morning, 9 a.m. Miriam's response came immediately. Consider it done. Merry Christmas, Milani. You're taking your power back. Christmas Day came. I went to that dinner, wore my thrift store dress, sat on that folding chair, let them laugh. Let Vanessa make her toast. Let Jordan push those papers toward me, the ones that would have given them everything, stolen the last thing I had left. And when he asked me to sign, when the whole table went quiet, waiting for me to be obedient, to be grateful, to be the good little mother who gave and gave until there was nothing left, I smiled. Let me take this home, I said. I'll read it when I'm calm. Because at 9 the next morning, a process server would knock on their door, and they'd learn what I'd known all along, that the woman they'd dismissed as weak, as pathetic, as someone to be managed and mocked and moved into a woodside studio, she owned the roof over their heads, and she was done being grateful. There comes a point when silence stops meaning defeat. It becomes preparation. The morning after Christmas, I woke up at 5:47 a.m. In my Astoria apartment. The radiator clanked. The neighbor's alarm went off through the wall. Outside, garbage trucks rumbled down Steinway Street, their hydraulics hissing in the dark. I made coffee. Sat at my kitchen table. Looked at the unsigned papers Jordan had given me, still in their glittery envelope, still waiting for my obedient signature. I smiled. Then I picked up my phone and texted Miriam. When do we start? Her response came in seconds. Now. Get dressed. We have work to do. Miriam's office at 8 a.m. looked different than it had the week before. Not cluttered, organized, battle-ready. She'd laid out documents across her desk like a general planning a campaign. First things first, she said, sliding a folder toward me. Cease and desist. Fraud affidavit. Notice of foreclosure triggered by unauthorized borrowing. She tapped each document. These go to Jordan, Vanessa, and the bank. Simultaneously. At 9 a.m., I stared at the papers, my name at the top, their names in the body. Legal language that translated to one simple truth. You don't own what you thought you owned. Second, Miriam continued, pulling out another folder. Your will. Right now, Jordan inherits everything if something happens to you. We're changing that today. To what? A trust. Any future grandchildren get access at 25 with conditions, character clauses, education requirements, proof they're not entitled brats. She smiled. And the rest? Community scholarship fund. Kids from Queens who need help paying for school. Kids like Jordan used to be. For years, I mistook generosity for love. Now, I'm learning the quiet math of self-respect. Do it, I said. At the bank, a manager named Patricia, 50-something, kind eyes, the type who'd seen every family drama, walked me through the process. Any accounts with Jordan listed as secondary? She asked. Savings. The one I was going to leave him for emergencies. Not anymore, Patricia typed efficiently. We're moving it into a protected trust. He won't even know it exists until you decide otherwise. Each keystroke felt like a chain breaking. Each signature, a claim I was taking back. Ma'am? Patricia looked up. Can I say something off the record? I nodded. I see this all the time. Kids who think their parents' money is theirs by right. They forget it was earned. She smiled sadly. Good for you for remembering your worth. By noon, I was standing outside 447 Furman Street, the Brooklyn Heights condo I'd helped buy 8 years ago. The building manager, a no-nonsense Russian woman named Svetlana, met me in the lobby with a locksmith. You are owner, yes? She asked, checking the LLC paperwork Miriam had provided. Yes. Then we change locks. Effective January 1st, you are only one with access. She gestured to the locksmith. He will install new system, keypad entry. Only you have code. I watched them work, feeling something shift inside my chest. For 30 years, I solved everyone else's problems. This time, I let the system solve mine. That afternoon, Vanessa called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Milani! Hi! Her voice was bright, chirpy, the same tone she'd used when she called me a pig. So, listen, we're doing New Year's Eve at the condo. Small thing, just family. You're coming, right? We don't want you sitting alone like some sad Hallmark movie. I looked at my reflection in the apartment window. Gray hair, tired eyes, a woman who'd spent a lifetime being small so others could feel big. Not anymore. Don't worry, sweetheart, I said calmly. I'll be there. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Perfect. Oh, and Mom, did you get a chance to sign those papers Jordan gave you? He really needs them before the new year for tax purposes. It's funny how silence can sound like thunder when guilt starts to echo. I'll bring them with me, I said. After she hung up, I texted Miriam, process server, bank rep, and building manager. Stand by for New Year's Eve, 3 p.m. sharp. Outside the condo. Done, she replied. Say the word, and we knock. That night, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, practicing. You wanted control, Jordan? Let's talk about control. My voice was steady, calm. The voice of someone who'd been pushed to the edge and decided not to jump, but to build a bridge and walk back on her own terms. They taught me that love meant giving. Today, I'm teaching myself that love can also mean stopping. I looked at myself, really looked, and saw someone I hadn't seen in years. Not a victim. Not someone to be managed or mocked or moved into a woodside studio. A woman who knew her worth. A woman who'd built an empire in silence and was about to reclaim it the same way. My phone buzzed. Miriam, everything's ready. Just text me one word when it's time. Now. I saved the message. Set my phone on the counter. Took a deep breath. For the first time, I didn't need them to hear me. My silence had already spoken. And in 5 days, on New Year's Eve, they'd finally understand what it was saying. Dessert arrived on white porcelain plates. Some kind of fancy chocolate thing with gold leaf. Kids ran around the living room, high on sugar and new toys. Someone had turned on Mariah Carey. All I Want for Christmas Is You played through invisible speakers, tinny and ironic. I sat at my folding chair, watching. Vanessa tapped her crystal glass with a silver fork. The sound cut through the chaos like a knife. Okay, everyone, quiet down. Time for grown-up gifts. She smiled at me, that same patronizing smile from earlier. Jordan and I have something very important for Milani. Jordan stood up, pulled the glittery envelope from the sideboard, and walked it over to me like he was presenting a diploma. Mom, he said, setting it in front of me. Just sign inside. Trust me. It's to protect you. The table went quiet. All eyes on me again. I looked at the envelope. "Merry Christmas, Mom," in his careful handwriting. Then I looked at my son. "Before I sign anything," I said quietly, "I'd like to give you both a gift." I reached into my purse and pulled out a thin manila folder. Set it on the table next to Jordan's envelope. Vanessa's smile flickered. "Oh, Milani, you didn't have to." "I wanted to." I opened the folder slowly. The room leaned in. The first page was a property deed. Official, legal, stamped and notarized. I pulled it out and held it up so everyone could see. "This," I said, my voice steady and clear, "is the deed to this condo. Located at 447 Furman Street, Unit 12C, Brooklyn Heights, New York." I turned it around, pointed to the owner line. "M.T. Thomas Holdings, LLC. Sole member, Milani Thomas." Silence. Not Jordan, not Vanessa, me. Murmurs rippled around the table. Elise set down her wine glass. One of the cousins whispered something. Vanessa's face went white. "Mom, what are you?" "I'm not finished." I pulled out the second page. The HELOC documents from the bank. The ones with the forged signature. "And this," I said, sliding it across the table toward Jordan, "is a crime you committed with my name." I tapped his sloppy attempt at my handwriting. "My doesn't curl like that. My ent sits higher. This isn't my signature, Jordan. It's fraud." Jordan's mouth opened. Closed. No sound came out. I turned to Vanessa. "You told me to be grateful you included me in a home I paid for. A home you illegally borrowed against without my knowledge or consent." Vanessa's hands started shaking. "Milani, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding." I picked up my phone, typed one word, "now." The doorbell rang. The room jumped. Kids stopped running. Mariah Carey kept singing about Christmas wishes while everyone stared at the door. Jordan stood frozen. "Mom, what did you—" "Answer it," I said calmly. He didn't move. So I did. I walked to the door, my door, in my condo, and opened it. Miriam stood there in a black coat, briefcase in hand. Behind her, a bank representative in a gray suit, and Svetlana, the building manager, holding official envelopes. "Good evening," Miriam said, stepping inside. Her voice carried across the room like a courtroom announcement. "We're here to serve notice of mortgage fraud and initiation of foreclosure proceedings on this property." The room went dead silent. "Effective immediately," Miriam continued, "all access and financial decisions regarding 447 Furman Street, Unit 12C, revert to the legal owner, Miss Milani Thomas." The bank rep stepped forward, handing documents to Jordan. "Given evidence of forgery and unauthorized borrowing, the bank requires full repayment of the fraudulent HELOC within 30 days, or we move forward with legal action." Jordan's hands shook as he took the papers. Vanessa stood up so fast her chair fell over. "You can't! This is our home! We have rights!" "You have no rights to property you don't own," Miriam said simply. And that's when Vanessa's mask shattered. She dropped to her knees beside my folding chair, mascara streaking down her perfect face, hands clutching at my thrift store dress. "Milani, please, I'm sorry. I was stupid. I didn't mean any of it. Please don't do this. Don't take our home." Her voice cracked. "I'm begging you. Please, have mercy." The title line. Finally. I looked down at her, this woman who'd called me a pig, who'd laughed about locking me in a woodside studio, who'd made me sit on a folding chair at my own table. I didn't yell. Didn't gloat. I just spoke. "You told me I should be grateful for a seat at my own table. You plotted to lock me away while you sold the roof my husband died to give you." I paused. "I'm not taking anything that isn't already mine, Vanessa. I'm just stopping you from taking what isn't yours." I looked at Jordan. My son. His face wet with tears, finally seeing what he'd become. "For 30 years, I gave you everything, and you repaid me by forging my name, stealing my equity, and planning to abandon me. Mom, I'm so sorry." "I know you are." Now, I turned to the room full of guests, Elise, the cousins, the friends who'd laughed at Vanessa's toast. "Since I apparently own this condo," I said calmly, "I'm going to have to ask you all to leave." I looked at Miriam. She nodded. "The party's over." One by one they filed out, silent, ashamed. The music stopped. The lights seemed dimmer. Jordan and Vanessa stood in the middle of the empty living room, surrounded by wrapping paper and half-eaten desserts. I picked up my purse, my coat, walked to the door of my condo, turned back one last time. "You have 30 days to figure out your next move," I said. "I suggest you use them wisely." And I walked out into the cold December night, leaving them standing in the ruins of their beautiful lie. For the first time in 30 years, I wasn't begging to be loved. I was demanding to be respected, and the silence behind me sounded like victory. Part 8. The Consequences of Evil. No more safety net. After the verdict, silence became my favorite sound. It was the sound of justice finally breathing. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed in a strange, cold blur. I didn't go back to the condo. Didn't need to. Miriam handled everything: the lawyers, the paperwork, the official notices that arrived by certified mail. But I watched. From my Astoria apartment, I watched the consequences unfold like dominoes falling in slow motion. Day 3. The movers arrived. Svetlana sent me photos. Big men in canvas gloves carrying out Vanessa's cream-colored sofa, the one that cost more than my monthly rent, Jordan's designer desk, the gold-framed mirror from the hallway, box after box of a life built on borrowed money and my forged signature. The building manager changed the lobby fob access. Jordan's key no longer worked, neither did Vanessa's. By day 5, there was a notice in the lobby. For rent. Luxury 2-bar condo, River Views, M.T. Thomas Holdings, LLC. My name. My property. Finally visible. Jordan's law firm put him on administrative leave. Miriam told me in her typical matter-of-fact way. They can't have an associate involved in mortgage fraud. Bad optics. He'll be lucky if they don't report him to the bar. I didn't feel satisfaction. Just a cold, clarifying truth. Actions have consequences, even when your mother spent 30 years shielding you from them. I met Jordan 10 days later at a diner in Midtown, his choice, neutral ground. He looked hollow. Older. Gray under the eyes like he hadn't slept since Christmas. "Mom," his voice cracked. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." I slid into the booth across from him. Ordered coffee. Said nothing. "Vanessa's parents kicked us out," he said quietly. "We're in a sublet in the Bronx. 1 bedroom. Radiator doesn't work half the time. I messed up. I know that now." I sipped my coffee. Let him sit in the silence. "I don't know how to fix this," he whispered. "I don't know how to make it right." I pulled a document from my purse. Slid it across the laminate table. "Repayment agreement," I said. "You pay back the HELOC. $500 a month. No interest. Takes you about 20 years, but you'll manage." He stared at the paper like it was a life raft. "And in exchange? I don't press criminal charges. You cooperate fully with the bank. You stop using my name for anything: credit, references, emergency contacts. Nothing." I met his eyes. "You earn your own life now, Jordan. No more safety net." His hands shook as he picked up the pen. "Does this mean... do you forgive me?" I thought about that. About forgiveness. About love and betrayal and all the years I'd given him everything while he learned to see me as a resource instead of a person. "I don't know yet," I said honestly, "but I'm giving you a chance to become someone I could forgive. Don't waste it." He signed. Hands trembling, tears dropping onto the paper. I didn't comfort him. Some lessons need to hurt. Vanessa's fall was quieter, more digital. Her Instagram, once full of perfectly curated shots of the condo, designer handbags, rooftop brunches, went dark, then sporadic, then desperate. One post. A blurry selfie, no makeup. Caption reading, "Sometimes life humbles you." Grateful for the lesson. The comments were brutal. "Weren't you the one who got foreclosed on?" My friend was at that Christmas dinner. She filmed the whole thing. "Karma is real." Her family distanced themselves fast. Elise stopped answering her calls. The cousins unfollowed her. Even Vanessa's influencer friends, the ones who'd posed in my condo for their own content, ghosted her completely. I didn't need to ruin them. Their lies had already done that. Sometimes I'd walk past the condo building on my way to work. Just to see it. Just to remember. The doorman, new guy, didn't know the history, would nod politely. "Good morning, ma'am." "Morning." I'd look up at the 12th floor. The windows that used to frame Jordan and Vanessa's perfect life. Now dark, empty, waiting for new tenants who'd pay market rent and never know the story behind the walls. They used to whisper that I'd lost my mind. Now they avoid their own reflections. One afternoon in late January, I got a text from an unknown number. "This is Vanessa. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need you to know I'm sorry. Really sorry. Not because I got caught, because I finally understand what I did to you. You gave us everything and I repaid you with cruelty. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I see it now. I read it 3 times. Didn't respond. Some debts don't need to be collected. Life has its own way of balancing the books." Spring came slow to New York. Dirty snow melted into gray slush. Trees budded hesitantly. The city shook off winter like an old coat. I rented the condo to a young couple, both teachers, decent people, no drama. They signed a fair lease and paid on time. Jordan kept his payments, $500, first of every month, like clockwork. We didn't talk much, a text here and there, slowly rebuilding something that might, someday, resemble trust. But I wasn't waiting for that day. I was learning to live in this one. One evening, I stood on my small Astoria balcony, nothing fancy, no river views, and watched the sun set over the borough, orange light reflecting off apartment windows, the subway rumbling below, sirens in the distance. My phone buzzed. A notification from the bank. Rental income. Deposited. I smiled. Not because of the money, because of what it represented. Dignity, boundaries, a life where love didn't mean erasure. Inside, the radiator clanked. The neighbor's TV hummed through the wall. My coffee sat cooling on the kitchen counter. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And for the first time in 30 years, that was enough. Part 9. Justice and Lessons: A Different Christmas. After the noise fades, what's left isn't victory, it's understanding. 1 year later. Christmas again. But this time, everything was different. I stood in my new apartment, Crown Heights, 2 bedrooms, rent stabilized, with windows that looked out over a community garden instead of the East River. The tree was smaller, 4 feet tall, plastic, decorated with ornaments I'd collected over 30 years. No gold leaf, no designer anything, just mine. The table was set for 6. Mismatched plates I'd found at a thrift store in Bed-Stuy. Silverware that didn't match but worked fine. A roasted chicken, not duck, not prime rib, surrounded by roasted vegetables, and a sweet potato casserole my neighbor Miss Lorraine had taught me to make. Simple, warm, real. Around that table sat the people who'd earned their seats. Jordan was there. No Rolex, no designer suit. Just jeans and a sweater, hair a little longer, face a little more lived in. He'd been working at a non-profit for the past 8 months, legal aid for low-income families. The pay was terrible. The work was honest. He looked more like the boy I'd raised than the man who'd forged my signature. Miss Lorraine sat beside him, laughing at something on her phone. She was 73, lived 2 doors down, and had become my closest friend without ever asking me for a single thing. Across from them, Marcus and Tina, a young couple from the